Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We're really thrilled to have you here. This is for everybody who's joined us on Facebook and also everybody who's joined us in the webinar. So welcome to How Documentaries Inspire Ocean Conservation. For our second annual Respect for Fish Day in Defense of Animals and the Dark Hobby are presenting an ocean film advocacy panel to showcase documentaries that expose the plight of animals who live in the sea. I'm In Defense of Animals Campaign Director Lisa Levinson, and I'm honored to moderate this really fascinating discussion today. So we're going to start off by having all of our panelists, we're going to have them introduce themselves and then give a brief summary of their film. So first, let's go ahead and we'll get started. Why don't we have Leilani? Do you mind sharing a bit about Racing Extinction and about yourself?
Sure, yes. Hi, I'm Leilani, and I am a biology graduate who ended up taking a little detour, and I drove race cars until 2019 when I retired. I worked for about 4.5 years on a film called Racing Extinction, which you can see the poster behind me. Racing Extinction is from the Oceanic Preservation Society, a nonprofit that I'm on the board of. You may have heard of us from our first film, The Cove, that won the Academy Award back in 2010 about the connection between the dolphin slaughter that takes place in Taiji, Japan, and the dolphin trade, the trade in captive dolphins. And then Racing Extinction is actually about the sixth mass extinction of species, which we're living through right now. So Racing Extinction came out in 2015, and you can watch it on streaming services. And it's really just about the human impact that we're having on our planet.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leilani. So why don't we have uh, David? Can you share next? This is David McGuire.
Yes, hi. Great to be with you. Thank you. Aloha from Kona. Uh, I'm the director and founder of a nonprofit called Shark Stewards, and our mission is to save sharks from overfishing and the shark fin trade and protect critical marine habitat. We do that through policy, education, and advocates. And a lot of our work is in film. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I also have been involved with the International Ocean Film Festival in San Francisco for 16 years. And we proudly screened The Cove before it won the Academy Award, and also screened Racing Extinction and broadcast that wonderful display of animals that are either dead, gone, disappeared, extinct on a building in the Mission in San Francisco. Luis Hoyos, the director, is a neighbor of mine in Sausalito. So it's really a pleasure to be on here with Leilani, who is somebody that I greatly respect, and OPS does a lot of fantastic work in conservation. So excited to talk about film and advocacy with you.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. And now I would love it if Swati, would you mind sharing a bit about yourself and the film?
Yeah, so I started out as a conservation journalist. I worked mainly in India for almost 18 years. And then when I moved to Cape Town 10 years ago, initially I resisted going into the ocean because I nearly drowned as a child and I was terrified of water. But then being with Craig and with everyone else who became part of the Sea Change project, I realized I couldn't tell authentic stories of the ocean if I didn't immerse myself in it. So it took me a while to get over my fear, but with the help of everybody, I started going into the ocean a lot more. And the Great African Sea Forest is an absolutely magnificent ecosystem. So when we made my Octopus teacher, of which I was an associate producer and production manager, but when we made the film with the Sea Change project, with which I work now as a conservation journalist, we really wanted to showcase this fantastic ecosystem to the world because most people who live in Cape Town don't know about this ecosystem. And a lot of people who live around the world maybe aware of kelp forests on their shores, but are not aware of kelp forests in general and what kelp forests are like and how biodiverse they are and what extraordinary ecosystems they actually are. And so when we made my octopus feature, the kelp forest was the background, but we also made the film to talk about how wild places and wild animals are so incredibly precious and they're these incredible gifts given to us, but it's not something that we are separate from, that humans are nature and we belong. And this world, this ocean is also our home. And if a human can spend time and make friends with an octopus, then how many endless possibilities there are in the wild and in the world. So that was really where we went with the film. And I'm excited about this panel and to talk about how storytelling can lead to different choices when it comes to looking at conservation and ecosystems.
Thank you so much, Swati. I must say, I personally fell in love with the octopus, the star of that film. So we're looking forward to hearing more about it. Thank you. Now, let's have Paula Foust share a bit about herself and the dark hobby.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining in on this very important day, Respect for Fish Day. And thank you to In Defense of Animals and Lisa for helping and really leading all of the attention today that we are trying to shine on these beautiful species who live beneath the ocean. So they don't get seen as often as all the species on land. And I am a documentary filmmaker and an author, usually working on different subjects like religious tolerance with the Dalai Lama in a film about Anne Frank, a lot of different subjects. But I came to find out about what's going on with the beautiful species, the reef wildlife at the hands of the aquarium trade. I went snorkeling again in a place in Kona where I hadn't been in about 17 years, got out of the water and said, where are all the fish? It was just really, really striking to find that there were only a few in the water where there used to be schools. So I met a lot of conservation heroes who fought very hard over 12 or 13 years and still continue to protect these species and also to prevent the harm that's happening to the reef. And that's how I got involved. And the film, The Dark Hobby, came out of that. And thank you so much for having me on the panel today.
Yes, well, it is a true pleasure. And so, for those of you who've joined us, the Respect for Fish Day is a special initiative from In Defense of Animals. And this is our second annual Respect for Fish Day. And the purpose is really to explore and expose the plight of fish worldwide. And we thought this would be a wonderful way to do that by showcasing these documentary and documentarians and also the impact that films can have on the future health of the oceans. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. So thank you. So let's get into some questions. We've got our first one here, which is, after seeing your film, I'm just curious for each of you, what are specific concrete actions that people can take to advocate for these animals?
I think one of the best things you can do is to share the film. So I immediately posted the trailer for The Dark Hobby after I watched it. I did the same. I did a lot of posts for my octopus teacher leading up to the Academy Awards. I was so happy to see that it won. I think film is so powerful in that it's one of the few times these days, in these modern days, where there's so much information coming at us and news, that it's one of the few times that people actually turn off their phones and really can get their full attention for like 90 minutes. And I think there's so much power that lies in that you can, have somebody's mind changed and have them really make concrete changes to their lives after they see a film. So for me, that's the best way to advocate, is to get everyone that you know to watch the film.
Thank you, Leilani. Let's see, who else would like to take an answer for that question? Let's see. How about David? Would you be interested in sharing?
Sure. Well, I think film is a very powerful medium of expressing a message. But my Octopus teacher was just such an extraordinary film because of this story. And I think stories are something that really attract us and appeal to us. And I've been guilty of falling into the too informative, angry documentary cause kind of thing, trying to affect change. And you tend to kind of preach to the converted and not reach a broad audience like my Octopus teacher, and I hope my dark hobby will, in clearly racing Extinction. So we want to be entertained as well as informed, and those human stories and those human connections, particularly to wildlife, are really powerful. And so I've actually shifted my approach, and the films that we do, or series we do, are typically with younger people. And in the case of our latest film, which was part of a series which is called Alice in Borneo's Wonderland, is about a young Chinese woman who learns how to scuba dive and then advocates to protect sharks. And we went on to help with the Canadian shark fin ban. And trying to reach people in their language is really important as well. But I think we want to connect to nature, and we don't want to be scolded, and we don't want to be angry. The world is a heavy place already. We don't want to be too depressed. And I think all three of these films kind of convey that and the beauty of nature and wildlife. But to speak to the point, that's one of the reasons that we're here in Kona is one, to support the first law in the United States to ban all recreational and tournament shark fishing, which passed last month, which is incredible. And Hawaii has a lot of power and a lot of cultural connection to the ocean. The Hawaiian people are very close, as you would imagine, living on an island, heritage around the ocean and wildlife in the ocean. And there's been, in recent years, a lot of extraction, and the park probably really clearly portrays that for pets, basically, for aquarium trades, and for entertainment. And it's not right, and I think Paula did a great job with the film, and she tells a really great story with Snorkel Bob, who will be on our panel discussion this afternoon. And so there is a bill, as the film tells, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. It was challenged, and essentially it was punted over to a bureau on the island, and now it's in the hands of really people to advocate and to urge them to do the right thing. So, this is active right now, whether they're going to allow permit fishing or collection of aquarium fish right here in Kona. Right, I'm looking out the window and have been diving all along the coast, and we've been documenting and filming as well. And there are areas that are just wonderful, and other areas that are operative and have been fished out. And I don't think we can let this happen. So there are several petitions I know. I think that we'll all share them in the link to urge these lawmakers to do the right thing and to stop this aquarium trade and encourage tourism trade of watching fish and experiencing fish and not eating them and not putting them in a tank. So we'll share a link in the message, and I think you have a petition as well. Fishfield has one. Anyway, there's a lot we can do, and right now we can use our voice and tell the state of Hawaii that we'd like to keep the fish in the ocean and keep them swimming.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Thanks, David. Who would like to share next? Maybe Swati?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think Leilani and David have already sort of beautifully expressed what it is that films can do and what, it can inspire people to do. And I think with my Octopus teacher, our big sort of focus at the Sea Change Project is getting people to reimagine their relationship with nature. It's a kind of what we do at Sea Change is we're in the water every day in the Great African Sea Forest. We immerse every single day in nature. There's not a single day that we don't go into that environment ourselves, and we film every day. We watch the animals every day. We're recording every day. So that joy and that inspiration, the hope, the passion that comes with that kind of daily immersion is what we want for people. And it doesn't necessarily mean just ocean. It just is, if you're inspired enough by a story or in the film to go out and connect to nature in your own meaningful way, I think is incredibly important, because I think we live at a time when a lot of us, there's so much technology around us. We have busy lives. We have challenging lives. We have, everyone's trying to make a living. Everyone's trying to, get on with what they're saying. And as David said, the sort of the daily pressures of life, and so much goes on. But I think it's incredibly important for our own mental, physical, and spiritual well-being to go back to that design, which is we are the human animal on this planet and nature is our home. And to sort of find that connection, that visceral connection is incredibly important. And I think with my octopus teacher, what was really interesting for us was when we were doing the conclusion of the film, and we were coming to the conclusion of the film, there was a lot of debate in the team on how should we do this? Should we end by talking about this octopus fishery that does operate and trap octopuses, and some of those octopus fishing traps end up entangling and killing whales, and it is an issue, and we've looked at that issue through the media. But in the film, the overwhelming consensus we finally came to in the end was we weren't going to put all of that in. What we were going to do, we were just going to showcase this relationship, and we were just going to showcase the wonder of this octopus, and we were just going to showcase the beauty of what is possible in nature. And what was extraordinary was, without an overt conservation message embedded in the film, we had thousands upon thousands of mails from people telling us about how they're never going to eat an octopus again. We have thousands upon thousands of mails from people talking about how they've changed their lives. Some of them have begun diving, some of them have turned to marine biology. Many people have sent us beautiful little personal stories of things they've experienced, even with their dogs or cats, or with the neighborhood squirrel or an animal or a bird that they've seen. So we've got this gamut of incredible emails and responses from people, and that's really what we want. We want that people to really reimagine their connection to nature, and that level of reimagining that connection will then create that space that is required in the human way of functioning, if you will, when we make choices, to be more compassionate about where we're going with our choices.
Thank you, Swati. Thank you so much. And how about Paula?
I really agree with what everyone on the panel is saying. There are so many facets to what can be communicated through a documentary film. And in the case of nature and the ocean, there's just tentacles reaching out into so many worlds. You think about through word of mouth. The most important thing about a film, they always say, is the word of mouth. That people will communicate with each other about the aspects that touch them so deeply. And in the case of the dark hobby, we got to touch on a lot of things: the cultural beliefs of the Hawaiian people, the depth of their relationship to the ocean. It's incredible. And the political action, and how the people there, whom I like to call conservation heroes, who worked so hard and continue to do so to save reef wildlife. But it can be inspiring to people all over the world about how we can spread the word, the awareness about the reefs and about who's living on the reef, and how the reef is very important in creating oxygen for our planet. Extremely important. And another tentacle, even, that our film got to reach is about using reef cams and how technology in the future, now it's a documentary film. 3 or 4 years from now, probably young people will all be tuning in to the live action all over the world, watching the reefs there and getting to know, to maybe not have a personal relationship with the fish right there, but really getting to know them. Maybe they can watch the same characters living, on the reef day after day in some far-flung area of Florida. But it's very interesting how all of the films that are covering different aspects of the ocean, we still have these same themes in common.
Yes, that is true. There's a wonderful theme throughout all of them, and that's why we've brought everyone together here today. So let's go on to another question. I think it's nice how everybody's kind of going in order. We can continue that. So the state of the oceans, it's really scary right now. And the UN has declared that this is the decade for oceans. How do you balance in your film telling the reality of the situation for the oceans and also the animals who live in the ocean in a way that doesn't overwhelm people and still inspires them to take action? I think Swati mentioned a bit of this in her last answer, but perhaps we can elaborate a little bit more. Why don't we start with Leilani?
Yeah, I agree. I think as an activist, it's a lot of bad news a lot of the time, and it can be very heavy to be an environmental activist. And sometimes it feels like we've already reached the tipping point. And so, how do you keep that positivity and keep people motivated? And one of the studies that I come back to when I feel a bit overwhelmed about all the bad news that we see is there was a study done to see if there's a tipping point for ideas. And the scientists actually found that if just 10% of a population has an unwavering belief in an idea, that it's actually inevitable that the rest of the majority of the society will accept that idea. And so I like to share that a lot with people because I feel like 10% feels like a really attainable number. And I think we're getting closer to that with a lot of the things that I advocate for, like veganism and electric cars and renewable energy. I feel like we're getting closer and closer to those tipping points, which gives me a lot of hope for the future. But I do think it is important because if your film is just making people depressed and they don't feel like there's some sort of action that they can take at the end to make a difference, then people don't know what they're going to do after they see the film. They might be frustrated, and you want them to be able to be enabled to do something. So, we had a big campaign after Racing Extinction where we did a hashtag with this, our world lives on social media now. So we did a hashtag that was called Start with One Thing. And so we asked people that had seen our film to post the one thing that they were going to change about their lives after having come out of Racing Extinction as a way for them to make a commitment, to make a change to their life that was good for the planet and good for the oceans. And by them posting that on social media, it does also help get the word out about the film, and allows you to sort of stay engaged with your audience. So your audience isn't, walking out of the theater and just, never thinking about you again. I think social media is so important to stay connected to your audience and keep them engaged on, issues that are going on right now. For example, Racing Extinction came out in 2015, but we still do a lot of campaigns around the extinction crisis that we're living through. So to stay connected with your audience, I think, is really important, and not let them forget about you or forget about the film.
Thank you so much, Leilani. And David?
I'm going to unmute myself. That's the sound of the ocean in the background, which is a wonderful sound. The ocean overcame technology with my headset this morning, so sorry. Really white noise, white water. The world is overwhelming if you're an environmentalist or if you're connected to nature. In my lifetime, over 50 years, we've seen as much as 90% of some sharks disappear. Large fish are going by the wayside, over half our coral reefs. You start to slide under the table. Climate change, it's overwhelming. And life is hard for many people as it is, and they're not activists, and they're not, I guess, fortunate as I feel I am to live the cause day to day, wake up every morning excited to go to work and reverse that. And so how do you persuade those people or get to that 10%? And the only thing that keeps me going are kids. It's all about youth. I love it. They're inspired. They're awed. You take them diving, and they see the issues. They understand about plastic. Kids are kids are the solution, and a lot of old people aren't going to change. So we'll just hopefully wait for them to go away and let the new generation be the new stewards. And so I think telling kids stories is really the thing that I've been working on. And Alice is here in Kona with me. She's now a student at Stanford in marine science. And we're working on another little project that's kind of a side story to Paula's film, and to carry on where her film left off in a more short media sense, to follow this cause that her film so well told story. And Snorkel Bob's infatigable championship of trying to protect Hawaii fish, and those are the native Hawaiians here in Kona who want to see the fish restored to their reef. So I think, we need to be upbeat. We need to be positive. Sylvia Earle really inspires me, and she was the last generation and has seen more, and she's been an incredible ocean champion. And she's there at the United Nations scolding these countries about climate change or overfishing. And again, so much energy, so much passion. So we need to create those new Sylvias and build on that momentum and change people's hearts and attitudes and behavior.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, David. How about Swati?
Yeah, so I think we were talking about the story and how do you tell this story while showing reality and yet maintaining hope. And that is, it's a fine balance, because as Leilani and David said, for those of us who are in it every day and you're looking at things around you every day, you do tend to get a bit overwhelmed. And maybe sometimes when you personally get overwhelmed, or you see things that you feel are hard or difficult, or you see things sliding or slipping, perhaps then that pessimism at some level, it can trickle down, not in a bad way. It's still really good to have a perspective. But I try personally every day when I'm in that ecosystem, for some reason, just being in nature every day gives me a lot of hope. When I'm in that great African sea forest, I can see it's a shifting baseline. Of course, I know that South Africans 2 generations before me saw a lot more reef fish, for example, in the great African sea forest, and they saw a lot more life. But the fact that there's still life to see, and when I go in there, I know it's not as wonderful as it was even 50 years ago, but it's still pretty extraordinary. So for me, the hope lies in the fact that we still are fighting for something that is still pretty damn extraordinary. This planet is still quite extraordinary. And for me, I rather work towards a world I want to see than fight against something that brings me down. So that's where I find, like, how can we tell that story? Because everything we tell ourselves at the end of the day is a story. What I know about myself is a story I tell myself. When I meet somebody, what I think about them is the story they've told me. Life around me is a story. So it comes down to what kind of stories are you telling other people? What kind of stories are you learning from the world around you? What kind of stories are you telling yourself? Because it's fact, and studies have shown that charts, graphs, and data, as much as we'd like to think of ourselves as intelligent and logical, that is not what makes us make decisions. At the end of the day, about 90% of the reasons we make decisions is emotion. And to strike on that, to find what is it that motivates you, what is it that inspires you, what is that emotion that gets you going in the morning, tapping into that, telling a story that fits into that, I think can make all the difference. And that was why with my Octopus teacher, I think just to show how this sort of shellless mollusk, for example, has evolved into such an incredibly sentient being and can have all of these wonderful life. And it's not just the octopus. The smallest animal has such involved lives when you start looking at it, from the tiniest limpet to sea urchins to the cracker shrimp to the big sharks. When you look at their lives and what they go through from when they are born to what the struggle for survival is for them to get to adulthood and reach sexual maturity and then procreate. It's an extraordinary story, and it is a story of hope. Every single time a single animal makes it is an extraordinary story of hope. A couple of years ago, I had the privilege of interviewing Sir David Attenborough, and one of the questions I asked him was, I said, you've spent so much of your life, fighting, advocating, doing all of this nature work. And I was like, but, if you look at his own life, 60 years down from when he was 30 to when I interviewed him, which was just before his 90th birthday, I said, in 60 years, look at us. We're pretty much on the brink of a sixth mass extinction. And, all of this is going on. And I asked him if that didn't bring him down. And he said to me, imagine how much we would have lost if we hadn't fought and if we weren't still taking care and fighting. And that really, really resonated, because to me, there is still so much that is extraordinary on this planet, so much life still there, and the capacity for places that are degraded to rebound and regenerate, if we would just give it some time and put some attention there and allow it that space and time to restore itself. So to me, nature is a story of hope. And that's what I like to focus on. And I think by bringing people along on that journey where they can relate to what is happening in nature, to something within them that inspires them, that gives them hope, I think that to me is, I see it the way to sort of go forward with the storytelling.
Wow, so incredibly inspiring. Paula, would you like to add to that, the answer to that question?
I think that the power of documentary film to inspire and to change what's happening today in our world is so powerful. If you look back when we all saw The Cove and we all saw Blackfish, and how that affected what was going on in our society, how people began to see animals who were held in cages or huge, bodies of water for entertainment purposes. We didn't know earlier, a lot of us, perhaps some people on this panel already knew, about the great intelligence some of these beings have. And even the really small fish we are knowing now, they sing. Their songs have been recorded in Perth, and amazing songs they sing. They communicate. They even recognize human faces. And they make plans. 3 of them will get together and plan how to go out and hunt. You go over there and you distract that guy, and I'm going to sneak up behind him. It's amazing the intelligence that these little tiny creatures have. So as that becomes more known through the medium of film, or perhaps some people share it through the medium of writing, or on the political stage through, printing and distributing flyers, or putting messages on social media about the great qualities that these small creatures have and how important they are in the tapestry of our whole earth, how everything's interconnected. And we are dependent on the ocean and the creatures in it, just as they may be dependent on us, because we as human beings have the capacity to destroy them, and we don't want to do that.
I'd love to add something too on that thought. I've been vegan now for 10 years, and the last 3 years of my racing career, I was promoting vegan food to the NASCAR fans and giving away free Impossible burgers and getting them to try vegan chicken wings and trying to show them that they could eat the same foods that they grew up on without killing any animals. And the interesting thing was I always wanted to message about the impact that the meat and dairy industry had on animals and animal cruelty and our planet, because those were the reasons that I was vegan. I wasn't really being vegan for my health, although my health improving was a nice side effect. When I started to work on that campaign, we found that actually the number one reason, there was a study done by the marketing team we were working with, the number one reason why people actually tried going vegan for the first time, either from a full-on meat eater to a vegetarian going vegan, the number one reason was actually health. So my race car changed from 2017 to 2018. The first car was addressing all the reasons to be vegan, world hunger and animal cruelty and the environment and also your health. Once we got the results back from the in-depth study, we realized that health was what we really needed to focus on. So the race car changed, and in 2018, we talked mainly about the health benefits. And that was hard for me because obviously that wasn't the thing that I was passionate about. I wanted people to save the animals and save the planet. But it turns out that it was more effective for me to talk about the health benefit side. So I had to completely learn a new way of communicating why I wanted people to try veganism. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the reason is why people do it. At the end of the day, they are saving animals and they are doing something good for our planet. So it is also important, I think, to understand your audience and understand that the way that you convey the message can make a difference.
Wow. Thank you, Leilani. That's an excellent addition to that question. So really appreciate it and how your activism of different types has woven together. So we're going to go on to our next question, which is, so why are films, and some of you may have touched on this a bit, but why are films a critical storytelling medium to excite and engage audiences? And maybe we can add to that question, what is your next project? So let's see, Leilani, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think I already touched a little bit on, I feel like film is the situation where in our modern world we get to get people to really turn off and focus 100%. Hopefully most people do anyways, shut their phones off and really pay attention. So I think it offers an incredibly powerful time to change people's minds and to get them to feel emotional, as was mentioned, that people actually change their behaviors more due to emotion than they do to facts and data. So it's important that the movie makes you feel emotional about the subject. And as far as my next project, I'm working with OPS is a film about existential threats to humanity. So from all the things that we could possibly take ourselves out with our own behaviors and our own actions to things that we cannot control. And we're going to also touch on and talk about the Fermi paradox and the Great Filter. So the working title right now is called The Great Filter.
Wow, very exciting. And tell everyone what OPS means, just in case they don't know.
Oh, yes, sorry. OPS stands for the Oceanic Preservation Society, and we are a production company, a nonprofit production company, and we made our first film was The Cove, and the second one was Racing Extinction that you see behind me. And I've been on the board of OPS since 2015, and they just do wonderful work. Luis Sahoyas is our founder and our executive director. And some of you may have seen a film that he recently directed called Game Changers, and also one that just came out that is called Mission Joy.
Thank you for clarifying that, Leilani. How about David? Do you want to address that question next?
Sure. We don't produce such lofty productions. more of our film is in short media, directed at advocacy and change. And in the past 8 years, Shark Stewards has been working in Southeast Asia and China, producing media actually in that language, trying to alter young people's hearts and inspire them to dive and learn where their fish comes from. Because there's a lot of ignorance, particularly where shark fin comes from. It actually translates to fish wing, not shark fin. And so we've been trying to go through the gateway to China, as it will, through Singapore, through Malaysia, and Indonesia, and more recently, Timor-Leste. And so, unfortunately, we're not able to travel there, but we've been working with local partners to create marine protected areas that are for divers. So kind of community science, people can learn how to dive, and try to bring young Chinese to come and learn to dive, learn to swim, learn about where their fish comes from, and kind of send them back as ambassadors. And so that's kind of the project we've been focusing on in the long term. It's sad not to be able to go and visit our friends. We do have friends in Indonesia and Lombok. It's called Source, and it's a marine protected area, and it's also a dive lab. Another one in Borneo, which is one of the reasons I'm working in Hawaii because I love being in the tropics and in the water every day. But I think I'm hoping that we will be actually returning doing a project on blue whales, but also sharks in Timor-Leste with really great filmmakers and produced by Simon Christopher, who's done a lot of work with Sir David Attenborough and Blue Planet. And we're hoping to get Sir David there on the boat, as well as Dr. Sylvia Earle and a bunch of kids, and do some live media and show them what the underwater world is like, and really one of the least disturbed coral reefs on the planet that is one of the most at risk.
Thank you, David. And how about Swati?
Yeah, I think film is like this extraordinarily powerful medium, especially when it comes to nature. Well, firstly, any medium that tells a story is a powerful medium. You know, it could be film, it could be a podcast, it could just be literally sitting on one side of the fire with an excellent storyteller on the other side of the fire, because as humans, we're hardwired to listen to stories. It's who we are, it's how we function. And there's this great quote that I always remember. I forget who it's by, but it basically says, science tells you why, you know, you should do things, but storytelling tells you or makes you want to do it. So I think that's like the beautiful thing about storytelling, is that you can have all of the facts and the figures and the data, and so much can come at you, but a story can really inspire you to do something about it. And I think film as a medium really works for nature and conservation films, because at the end of the day, a lot of what we experience, all of us on the panel, we're lucky that this is our jobs and this is what we do day in and day out. And then there are many people on the planet lucky enough to have the time, the money, the effort that they make to go into nature. But there are millions of people on the planet who do not have the privilege, who don't have the time, they don't have the access to get to places, to see nature for what it is, to experience nature in the way that we perhaps do every day. So I think film is an extraordinary way visually for them to live through that experience, through that story. So, you know, so that for me is like probably why film is like so powerful. And then and of course, you know, when you add a story to a visual, you know, the power of looking at that is so much more. In terms of future projects, so with the Sea Change Project, we're a not-for-profit organization. We're a group of storytellers, media, you know, journalists and scientists, and we are basically storytellers for ocean conservation. And our tagline is, "Remember, you are wild." So our entire focus is to try and get people to reimagine their relationship with nature, to get people to go back into deep nature immersion and truly understand what that means as a practice. And so we just finished with my Octopus teacher, and that was a bit exhausting, and it was a long sort of, especially this year, has been a long process with a lot of media, and especially because of the Academy Awards and all of it. But down the line, the two immediate sort of projects we're working on is, one is a science project. We are looking at not finding, but also finding 1001 species in the Great African Sea Forest and telling stories of each of those animals that are found. It's the 1001 project, kind of like how in the Arabian Nights, every night, you know, Scheherazade, the princess, told a story every night to postpone her execution, if you will. So this is, we are chroniclers of stories from Mother Nature. We're telling her stories for 1001 species for the Great African Sea Forest to get people to fall in love with her. So the execution, in a sense, is postponed. And the other project we're working on is a Forest of the Seas project. We are hoping to, in the next couple of years, travel to pretty much all of the kelp forests around the world. Kelp forests cover about 1/4 of the world's coastlines. That's 25% of the world's coastlines actually have kelp forests. And many of them are vanishing due to climate change. Many of them are under tremendous pressure from local pressure. They've been classified as the second most vulnerable to climate change as an ocean ecosystem, but they've also been identified as one of 10 very important ocean ecosystems to restore for greater oceanic health by 2050. And again, very little known about these ecosystems. People really don't understand what this forest is like underwater and how it functions and what it actually does. So to increase that awareness and to tell the story of all forests of the sea, we're doing this journey, like a voyage around to all the forests. We'll be working with scientists and storytellers and filmmakers in different countries with kelp forests. We're also working in these forests, and at the end of it, produce a massive global sort of an exhibition. There'll be plenty of stories in the media and maybe even short films, or depending on stories that we find a bigger film. And of course, still continue to swim and dive every single day in the Great African Sea Forest and film, to collect our stories here. So that's really where the Sea Change project is sort of going post my Octopus teacher. And who knows, maybe when we all find our energies again, especially Craig and Pippa, maybe we'll do another film. But yeah, there's no plan as of yet to embark on that because of the science project and the expedition that we are planning. Yeah.
Thank you, Swati. And Paula, how about you?
Well, the power of film to inspire is just incredible. It really takes people out of their everyday world and, places them in an entirely other situation. And in the case of the films we're discussing today, the films about the ocean, a lot of us don't have the opportunity to go diving all the time. So to be able to see it through the fantastic underwater videography is amazing in these ocean films. I believe is education. So normally we will cut a short version for classrooms, and we really want to influence younger viewers who are coming up in their lives and who will change the face of the world going forward, the young people. And what we will work on next, we're not totally sure yet, during, several conditions. So hopefully something that will really make a difference. And there's a lot of things on the back burner. So I think it will come to pass pretty soon that we'll be able to decide.
Fabulous. Well, you're working on so many things at the moment, so I can understand that. So let's move on to another question here. So this one is, so some of you, there might be tidbits of this that you've shared, but if you could share also any heartening or inspiring stories from people who've seen the film and have taken decisive action as a result, such as deciding to stop eating octopus, for example, octopuses, and seeing sharks as scary, changing their frame of reference for sharks, or keeping fish in aquariums or even visiting aquariums. So any kind of decisive actions from hearing the stories through your films? Let's start with Leilani.
Yes, with our hashtag Start With One Thing campaign that we did after the film, I got to see a lot of the commitments that people were making. And, we were calling on people to do whatever they could. But some of the strong messages that we sent in the film were focused around moving towards a plant-based vegan diet, also supporting electric cars if you were going to buy a car to make your next one electric, solar power. And by far, the number one thing that people did was give up meat and dairy from the food that they were putting on their plate, because 3 times a day we all sit down to eat, and it's getting easier and easier every day. There's so many wonderful new vegan products out there every single day. So it's a very easy thing to do, and obviously it's a lower commitment as far as financially, from driving an electric car, putting up solar panels. So we got an electric car back in 2013, and we put solar panels up on our roof in 2014 to power both our house and our cars. So that's great, but we also understand that not everybody has a good south-facing roof where they can do that. Some people are in apartments or condos. They don't own the house that they're in. So it's just not attainable for everyone. But I did do, an unscientific poll on my social media to see what was the number one thing, and it was by far the number one thing was going plant-based, or at least cutting back on meat and dairy. And we're actually doing a campaign at OPS right now that's called Fish Free Fridays. So that will lead up. It's every Friday, and we post vegan recipes for seafood-based meals that are made with all vegan products. And that will lead up to an event called Fish Free February. So a little bit like the Veganuary campaign that was very successful, where we asked people to commit to 30 days of being vegan. And it's a similar thing, but it'll take place in February. So I think with movies like Seaspiracy that just came out, and getting people to think about, when they order something that has marine life in it, that is not the only thing that was killed to get that fish on your plate. To think about the bycatch, think of the sharks and the seals and the dolphins, and the turtles and all the other species that are being killed by these fishing nets. So I think that is a really important message. And I feel like the seafood, vegan substitutes is one of the smaller. There's not as many options there. So I really like the Fish Free Fridays campaign, because it allows people to see, okay, it's not just vegan chicken nuggets I can get. It's not just vegan burgers and sausages. There are actually a lot of new vegan fish based and seafood based products out there. And some of them are just wonderful.
Great. Thank you, Leilani. And David? Oh, might need to unmute. I think David?
I think you're still muted.
I muted myself. I double clicked. Okay. I think, what inspires me, again, are youth. And, I think we need to approach the problem holistically. And listening to Swati, in California, we've lost 95% of our large kelp forests in just 5 years due to sea surface temperature increases and other impacts, sea urchins, wasting diseases of sea stars, their predators. So the impacts are multifactorial, and we need to approach them in that way, in a more holistic ecosystem approach, which is why we work in supporting marine protected areas. And the goal of the United Nations is to create 30% of ocean protection by 2030. So we've been working on that in California quite successfully with our national marine sanctuaries. There's a new one proposed. We're well over 30%. The rest of the world is far behind at less than 7%, or around 7%. So we just celebrated the 15th year of the Papahanaumokuakea, which was at the time in 2005 the largest marine protected area in the world. They're called the Kapuna Islands. They're the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. They're large, they're integrated, they have the entire ecosystem, not just one small patch. And that's how nature can recover. Fish can recover from overfishing. We can save sharks, but we need to give them a place to live, and we need to protect the things that they live on to live. So Hawaii just protected sharks, which is really great, but we need to protect the place they live. So that's the goal, is to inspire people to get in the water, to see this incredible planet that we live on. If you can't see it live, like I'm fortunate enough to see it on a film, and then that next step is to use your voice or use your actions. And diet is one of them. But as Leilani said, I mean, clearly climate change is something that's going to affect us all. And there's so many things we can do immediately to mitigate that. And one of them is just reducing plastic, stopping the use of single-use plastic, driving less. And so getting that message through to the next generation is going to be critical. And also other countries that are affluent, like China, because we all can't live like Americans have lived. We can't be driving our cars. We can't be consuming fossil fuels at the rate we've been consuming. So I think being leaders here and showing by example, other people will hopefully pick up that baton and live rightly for the planet.
Yes, thank you, David. Swati?
Yeah, so as I said before, I think our sort of maximum number of sort of responses were that people weren't going to eat octopuses anymore. That was the single biggest sort of response we got from the film. But interestingly enough, we also got a lot of emails from people who had their own challenges with depression, anxiety, mental health, and a lot of them who then went out wherever they were into nature, even into a park near where they lived, and wrote us beautiful stories about how just changing 20 minutes of their day into practice about being in nature and engaged in nature really, really helped them, and how the film sort of inspired them to do that because of how Craig went into the water every day when he was going through what he was going through. So I think that was pretty extraordinary that we got so many of those personal stories and emails from people basically talking about how being in nature even for 20 minutes made such a huge difference to how they were feeling emotionally and physically. Children, so many children. We had some beautiful messages from parents whose children had some challenges like ADHD, or they were slightly autistic, or they had problems with children maybe not sitting through an entire film or watching something through. And a lot of parents wrote to us saying they were shocked that this was the one film that a lot of those children actually sat entirely through and watched over and over again and sort of drew octopus. So we actually have artwork from all over the world. We had lovely little letters and mails that have come in with children having drawn fish and octopus and kelp, and it's just been beautiful. And some of them have drawn stuff that they see when they go out. So sometimes it's just a grasshopper or a bird or whatever, but it's beautiful. And as David says, I think really it's children, right? I mean, that's why we cannot lose hope, because if we all hope to have children and our children are going to have children, we can't afford to lose hope, because we have to be able to hand over a world to them that they can survive in. And just also in the way children are so open to ideas and open to emotion and open to seeing the truth in a way of things around us. I mean, it's extraordinary. They give us so much inspiration and hope in the way that they are responding to the challenges that we see around us. And so those were sort of the majority of the responses that we got. And it's been incredible that it's sort of this wide variety of audiences watch the film, and a wide variety of people have sort of taken whatever it is that they've taken from the film and sort of acted on it, or changed because of it, or been inspired to do something because of it. So it's been a real privilege. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Swati. And Paula, how about you?
We have definitely heard from a lot of people that they will no longer go and purchase fish to have in an aquarium. They hadn't realized before they saw the film The Dark Hobby that most of the fish, 90% of the fish that are captured by the aquarium trade and then they're shipped to the mainland, 90% of them die within a year of capture. There's about 28 million fish per year in the aquarium pipeline. And many people have let us know that they won't visit aquariums anymore either, because now they realize the suffering and the trauma that these small beings have gone through to, be captured and be shipped there. So there has been a lot of change, and there will continue to be. We hope that everyone goes to thedarkhobby.com and signs up. There's a list there to stay informed about what's happening, as hopefully the United States Congress and the country will, in a similar fashion, perhaps, legislate and about the treatment of these tiny little animals, the way that larger animals are in focus already. So we're looking at moving forward, and we also have a petition there at the website to sign about not buying fish for aquariums anymore. So we look forward to more change, and we look forward to affecting change with the Dark Hobby.
Excellent. Thank you, Paula. Well, gosh, this time has really flew by, actually, to have everyone and all of your amazing comments. And I feel so inspired by everything that each person has said. And I know that there's so much more we could talk about and so much more we could all do. I want to take a moment just to thank everyone who has joined us, whether you have been a participant in the Zoom, whether you're watching the live stream on Facebook, or our panelists themselves. I mean, for taking time out of your busy schedules to share a bit about your films and what went into them. Just wanted to offer if anyone had a closing comment or anything they'd like to share before we um, finish our panel today.
I'll share some words from the wonderful Jane Goodall, who I just interviewed a week ago. And she said, there's still a lot left that's worth fighting for. So I always try and keep those words echoing in my head, because I know we see so often so many really sad stories about the environment and the species that we're losing. But I think it's really important to remember there's still so much that we can save.
Thank you so much, Leilani, for sharing those words from Dr. Jane Goodall. Anyone else? Any other panelists have something they'd like to say?
Yeah, I'd like to paraphrase Dr. Sylvia Earle, and she said, if you want to change the world and inspire people, take a kid down to the ocean and show them what the ocean is like. And I want to add to that, take their head and put it underwater. You might want to teach them how to dive first. So seeing is believing, knowing it is loving it, and wanting to protect it. And so the more people that get to the ocean or connect to the ocean, which is 71% of our beautiful planet, the more people will want to protect it. And you can learn more. Join the Dark Hobby and you, Lisa, in the Prince of Animals panel this afternoon. We'll talk about the fish and how we could take action to save fish and fauna.
Perfect. Thank you, David. Swati, any closing from you?
Yeah, for me personally, John Muir's quote when I was very young, something about it just really appealed to me. He said, I go into the woods to lose my mind and find my soul. So I think that's really where and why nature is just such an intrinsic, important part of everything that we do, because we are wild, we are nature. And I think to remember that we're part of this wonderful fabric around us is absolutely key and crucial. Every bit of food that we eat, every breath of air that we take, every drop of water that we drink, we're connected. We're that deeply connected. It's sort of like Mother Nature, and the reason we call her Mother Nature is because we're in this enormous lifelong gestation period with the planet. Just like a baby in the womb is fed through the uterus, with the mother's nutrients. It's exactly what this planet's doing for us. We're in this phenomenal gestation period, and we have to respect the fact that this biosphere is what's keeping us alive. And in terms of action, for a lot of us who may not be able to go out there and do this every day, support your local scientists who are studying and discovering things in nature. Support your local conservation organizations who are doing beach cleanups, or stopping people from using plastics, or if you want to sign petitions, educate yourself. Today we're all a click away from so much information and so many wonderful things that we can do, like Dark Hobby. They have a wonderful website and they have all this information. So if you want to know more, get onto that website, educate yourself, help where you can, donate to organizations that can actually be in the field and do the work which you can't. And also remember that the people who could potentially be involved in what we call all of the business, the industrial fishing, the commercial activity, they're also people. Everyone's trying to get on, everyone's trying to make a living. Survival is a big people's economic livelihoods is a big thing. So to not separate yourself from something going, that person is the problem and I'm not. So as Jane Goodall once said, don't be confrontational. And if you want to make someone change their minds, appeal to their hearts. So, just those, to me, that those are the things that are like really important, and to find that connection and keep telling your story. Find new stories for yourself. If you don't like something, change the story.
Nice. Thank you, Swati. And Paula, any closing from you?
Just that for people who would like to share about what's going on, the wonder, respectforfishday.org has a toolkit with beautiful images to share on social media and flyers with a lot of information about reef wildlife. You can share the flyers, or you can print them out and go pass them out. Some people are even going down to a certain aquarium today that Lisa can tell us about, and also to pet stores and fish stores, and just letting people know the real truth, the real facts behind what's happening. So the hierarchy living on the reef that we are connected to, and the reef itself.
Excellent. Yes, that's very true. Today, for Respect for Fish Day, that we have about 250 allied organizations who've joined together with In Defense of Animals to promote this idea and raise awareness so that we can start to make lives better for fish everywhere. And this event is part of that. So please share it with your friends, this discussion that we've had today. And also we have a live protest / demonstration going on at the Sequest in Woodbridge, New Jersey, trying to stop aquariums in their tracks. So we thank everybody for joining. You can find out a lot more information about Respect for Fish Day by going to respectforfish.org. That's respect with FOR, fish. And there's also a hashtag respect with the number 4 fish. So thank you all very, very much for tuning in. We so appreciate your time and your efforts, and all of this, may all of this manifest a better world for fish everywhere. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the rest of Respect for Fish Day. Take care. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha.